do? What you gonna do?
Hello everyone, Mikezodia here, and welcome to my first build video, the Eldritch Knight. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the D&D terminology, an Eldritch Knight is pretty much a magic knight. However, do not let the name fool you, because you can actually use this exact same build to create an arcane archer, a spellsinger, and many other builds. So, one of the biggest reasons I created this build was to incorporate as many fighting styles as possible. Like, I've seen mage melee builds. A lot of times it turns into sort of like a spell sword, where you have a weapon in one hand and a spell in the other. And for some players, this is not something they want. They want to swing their big, heavy two-handed sword and not mess with the whole casting aspect. And that's why I like this build, because you could now incorporate your magic into your melee. If you looked at my little intro video, you'll probably notice that my guy was using elemental attacks along with a few spells, and none of them were being cast in combat. Like, at no point did I put my sword and shield away to cast a spell. Everything was nice and fluid. If you enjoy this style, then this build is perfect for you. Now, the big question is, what fighting style do you want? Because your starting race can actually give you a bump in the right direction. You could obviously make this build with any race you want, but certain builds have their advantages. For example, if you wanted to use a two-handed weapon, a Nord or Orc usually make good candidates for that one. Now, if you want to make a more stealth build or like a spell sword build, usually Dunmer makes a good choice for that one. And then if you want, let's say, a sword and shield version, then, or even a dual wield, red guards are really good for that. And for sword and shield, Imperials are pretty nice. But all in all, you could pick whatever race you like. Every race has their own advantages. For this example, I am going to use an Imperial. And I'm going to simulate leveling this Imperial up as a Eldritch Knight, which is going to be a sword and shield version. Now, I want you to take the information you get from this and then apply it to any other builds you're trying to make. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is simulate how you would level up this character. The first thing you need to do is choose how you plan to fight with this character. Pick any 3 skills that will be your main skills for this combat style. I'll be using a one-handed block and heavy armor knight. However, you may want to play, let's say, an arcane archer, in which case you'll probably grab marksmanship, evasion, and some other skill of your choice, maybe even stealth. If you're using a two-handed build, you'll probably take two-handed, an armor of your choice, and one other skill that might help you. Maybe you want to do smithing, or speechcraft, or alchemy for better potions. I'll leave that choice up to you. So, going back to my build, let me go raise the 3 skills that I want. Now, the one thing I want you to keep an eye on is notice that as long as a skill does not go beyond 25, it'll only cost 1 skill point. And this is important because we need to salvage as much skill points as we can for these early levels. If you have a skill that will go beyond 25, do not raise that skill. Instead, save the points for something else. Now, for this build to work, we need 3 other skill trees, which will be alteration, destruction, and restoration. So this is the first level. Now you can pick whichever attribute you want. For this build, I'm going to go with health since I'm a melee character. Now, after we leveled, I will now be raising the same skills again. However, notice that my restoration is 25. I will not be touching this then. I have 5 leftover skill points, and a lot of my skills are now 25, which means these will take more points to raise up. For that reason, I am going to save these last 5 points for alteration. As you can see, alteration is now 25, and this is the ideal level for these 3 skill trees because this would let you do Adept level spells, which are the main point of this build. The remaining 30 can be spent into your main skills that you want to use. In this case, I'll be using block, heavy armor, and one-handed. You will pick the 3 main skills that you chose in the very beginning, or mix and match if you prefer. Now, this process will repeat until your 3 main skills are level 50 each. You'll notice that we have no excess point every time we level 3 skills. Now, notice that my 3 main skills are level 50. At this point, we are going to slow it down. We're no longer going to touch these skills and will now focus on our supporting skills, as these are now crucial for our build to get stronger. We will now be raising alteration, destruction, and restoration specifically. And this process will repeat until they are also level 50. Now, unfortunately, I ran out of levels before I could hit 50. However, once they do hit 50, we will go back to our main skills and level those up. Or, you can also choose to mix and match. For example, restoration can get really powerful spells around level 75. So can destruction. So if you want, you could focus on those. Or you could choose one from each. Choose your one-handed weapon, and then one spell of your choice that you want to raise. That kind of depends on how you want to tweak your build and what spells you actually enjoy from which tree. However, for the most part though, your build is now complete. Alright, so now you have chosen your race and your playstyle. So how does this build even work? And for that, we will look at our magic section. Notice here that we have multiple enchantments. These are coming from the Apprentice level Destruction and the Apprentice level Restoration. The Destruction will give you Fire Weapon, Frost Weapon, Leeching Weapon, and Lightning Weapon. Meanwhile, Restoration will give you Radiant Weapon, which is Sun Spells. Now, the important thing about this is to remember that you do not need to put your weapon away in order to cast these. They are used on the fly. Notice on the second series of attacks, I enchant my weapon with fire, allowing me to deal fire damage. Now this is important if you're trying to exploit multiple weaknesses of a monster. For example, most undeads are usually weak to blunt, fire, sun, and silver. We have a silver mace which does the silver and blunt. Unfortunately, this is not enchanted. However, because we're an Eldritch Knight, we can now enchant our mace with whatever element we want. In this case, I can enchant it with sun or fire. Now, you can also exploit weaknesses of other creatures. For example, trolls. Trolls are weak to fire, which will stop the regeneration. If you didn't have a fire weapon, you'd be kind of screwed. But now, we can actually enchant our weapon with fire, so we could take a troll on. Also, if you're exploring a Dormer Ruin, and you run into a Centurion, those guys are weak to lightning. Now you just have that lightning element on the fly. And of course, if you run into any vampires, you can now switch to your radiant weapon and use that as well. Overall, your character can now handle a lot of different scenarios, and the bestiary will be your new best friend to exploiting their weaknesses. Now you may have noticed that we have taken another skill tree, and that is alteration. Alteration is an amazing tree for defense and utility, and we'll be using that as well. Also, later on in alteration, you also get access to wind spells, which will kind of fit the theme of a magic knight or magic archer or whatever you're building. Now, one spell that really comes to mind is Aatronach's Recital, which is a very powerful spell. What this does is allows you to cast a buff onto yourself free of charge at the start of battle, and we could be using this to devastating effect. For example, there's a spell called Nightblade Under Destruction, which is Adept, and as you can see, it costs a lot of magicka for me because I don't have Adept level destruction yet. However, I can use Aatronach's Recital to cast this onto myself. What this does is increases my melee attack to 50 feet. Pretty cool, right? Then there's also restoration ones, where for 30 seconds, curses random foes are within 40 feet and absorb health from them. This is amazing for melee characters who want to stay alive in combat, and this is the one I actually use right now with my Aatronach. And there are also many other combinations, such as Visions of Opportunity, which reduces the armor and magic resist of nearby enemies, which is great because we exploit both of those. We both do physical and elemental damage. And there are many other combinations you could obviously find. For you Spellblades out there, for be lobbing spells, you could also use Draining Shroud. This will give you health and magicka, so you're healing and getting some magic back to keep spamming more spells. This is expert level. However, thanks to Aatronach, you could use it to cast this onto yourself. Another option for Life Leech is Absorbing Cloak, which will gradually drain health from nearby enemies. So this is also a nice choice as well. Now, another cool feature about this is it can be applied to any single weapon that you want, as long as the weapon is not enchanted. So I can use it for two-handed weapons, for example, or even bows. As you can see from the top right of my screen, this bow is now enchanted with fire damage. You can also double check in your inventory. Now this also applies to your bare hands as well, using the unarmed. I now have unarmed attacks that deal fire damage. So for those of you who are playing monks, this is perfect for you as well. Alright, now that we have finished talking about the build, let's see it in action one more time. I'm going to be sending my level 13 Eldritch Knight to the early parts of Bleak Falls Barrow, so you guys can see it in action one more time. And watch how I'll do all the elemental attacks without ever having to switch spells or switch my playstyle at all. I'll still be playing a full sword and board character and have the advantage of magic on my side. Alright, so as you guys can see, I didn't change my combat style at all. Still played as my sword to board warrior, with the added benefit that I can now do more damage or have a little better sustain on myself. And of course, there are many spells in this game, cloak spells and other enchanted spells, so you could feel free to try new combinations. Maybe you'll find one that you like, and it doesn't have to be like a sword and board warrior, like I said before. You could do it on a monk character, or you can even use it on a stealth build if you want to. There's many, many options you could work with. So experiment with different kinds of spells, and you're going to see that this build will give you a very balanced character that can exploit enemy weaknesses and survive pretty well. I hope you enjoy this build, and if you like it, please give me a like and subscribe. It will really help this channel grow, and stay tuned for future build videos. Have a good one.